I'm not teaching, I'm publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning for the Life in the UK test part 103, War of France part 2, while doing a leg stretching, and if you participate in a leg stretching, let's set your own risk. So let's start with the leg stretching. We're bringing one leg in front with heel onto the ground, and we're pulling the toes a bit towards us and stretching through the leg. And from time to time, we're going to contract the quad muscles and release the quad muscles. Now we're starting with contracting the quad muscles. So during the 18th century, Britain fought a number of wars with France. We had it already that both had the same ambitions in the colonies and the same trading and expansion ambitions, and that brought Britain often in conflict with France. In 1789, there was a revolution in France, and the government soon declared war on Britain and releasing the contraction, but we're keeping the leg there. And then Emperor of France became Napoleon, and the war continued. And then there was the big battle of Trafalgar in 1805. Contract again the quad muscles, and let's try to remember 1805 was the Battle of Trafalgar. So 1805 Battle of Trafalgar, the French and Spanish fleet combined against the British Navy, and the Britain War. Admiral Nelson was in charge of the British fleet at Trafalgar, and he was killed in the battle and released a contraction. So we should probably also know Admiral Nelson. Admiral Nelson, he was the commander of the British troops or British fleet, but he was killed and contracted last time. Nelson's column in Trafalgar Square, London, is a monument to him. So there is a column. I don't know exactly what a column is, but it must be a statue. But what is now the difference between, and really we're switching the leg, between a cenotaph, a memorial, a statue, and a column. The other leg in front, the heel onto the ground, and we are contracting the quad muscles, and we're pulling the toes towards us. Where's the column for Admiral Nelson? So we should remember that 1805 was the Battle of Trafalgar, and that the British troops led by Admiral Nelson, won against the French and Spanish fleet, and the French had Emperor Napoleon and release contraction, who came on not on the throne. Yes, he crowned himself, but who was the leader of France, and that happened soon after the French Revolution in 1789. So in 1805, there was a Battle of Trafalgar, and contract again the quad muscles. Admiral Nelson was killed, and in the Trafalgar Square in London, there's a monument for Admiral Nelson. His ship, HMS Victory, so we now know of two ships. We are knowing of Golden Hind, that used Sir Francis Drake and release the contraction. Sir Francis Drake used the Golden Hind to circumnavigate the world, and Sir Francis Drake was a commander in the battle against the Spanish Armada in 1588, and contract again. And now in 1805, Admiral Nelson was the commander of the British fleet against the Spanish and the French troops at the Battle of Trafalgar, 1805. So now his ship of Admiral Nelson, HMS Victory, and release again the contraction, HMS Victory, can be visited in Portsmouth. So we're knowing of another town. We're knowing of Edinburgh, where's Edinburgh Castle, and contracted last time. We're knowing of London, where's the Trafalgar Square, Westminster Bridge, and the House of Parliament. And I don't know if we know another town. We know of Suffolk, where's Sutton Hoo, there was one of the Saxon kings buried with treasure and armor in a ship with a mound of soil over. And we know of a couple of us. So now the next second exercise, the anchor chain stability test. One leg to the outside, the toes are pointing forward, and we're pressing a bit with the leg into the ground. We know of a few other things. We're knowing of Halmstad and Bayondale. These are two forts along the Hadrian's Wall. And we're knowing of Maiden Castle, and we're knowing of the St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and we're knowing of 2 or 3 things more. But let's go on here. So, and we're knowing of Portsmouth. Portsmouth is, it's not explained, but Portsmouth is a port in England, and we're knowing of Portsmouth. Release your contraction a bit, but keep the leg there. Keep the main body part center. Keep the leg there. We're releasing your contraction now. We are knowing that of ports that canals were built to transport the goods from the fabrics to the ports during the Industrial Revolution. and can be visited in Portsmouth. So today people can visit Portsmouth, and today people can also visit Scarborough. No, it was not about Scarborough, but people can visit Scarborough and drive a leg again a bit to the floor. Can visit Scarborough. Scarborough is the village on Orkney Island, the best preserved prehistoric village. And people can visit Stonehenge in Wiltshire, and we can visit Maiden Castle. I think we had something else that could be visited. They can visit the HMS Victory. That was his ship during. They don't say if it was during that battle, but I guess it was during the battle. He died in that battle, so he did not get the next one. So now the leg to the outside, the toes are pointing forward, with the other leg now, and we're pressing the leg a bit into the ground. And so the HMS Victory can be visited in Portsmouth. Portsmouth is a town in England. People can go there and visit the HMS Victory. HMS means her mail ship. Her royal mail ship, I think. HMS. So it's just HMS Victory. The British Army also fought against the French. The British Army. So here they are separating. We know a bit of separation already, and really stretch a bit, that the king had to ask after the Bill of Rights every year for money for the army and the navy. And now they're here clearly separating. So the British fleet, which is the navy, did fight the Battle of Trafalgar 1805. And now the British army also fought against the French, so the army also. In 1815, the French wars and, stretching again the leg into the ground, the French wars, calling the French wars, you will probably encounter it also under the name Napoleonic Wars or something like that, Napoleonic Wars or something like that. In 1815, the French wars ended with the defeat of the Emperor Napoleon by the Duke of Wellington at the Battle of Waterloo. We are combining that war with France. Wellington was known as the Iron Duke and later became Prime Minister. That is all what we have to the War of France. We will repeat it, of course. But first we are going to the next exercise, card check. We're having the leg at the outside, flex foot, and we're bringing it up and down again. So, first, something beside it. One of the knowing of the first Prime Minister, that was in 1721, was it Sir Robert Walpole, for 21 years. He was the first Prime Minister. Now we're knowing of another Prime Minister, and that is Wellington. Wellington was known as the Iron Duke and later became Prime Minister. The Iron Duke. Wellington was known as the Iron Duke and he later became Prime Minister. And Wellington is who? Wellington is the commander who is the one who defeated Napoleon in 1815 by the Battle of Waterloo. So we're knowing now of two new battles. The first one is 1805, Battle of Trafalgar. There we have Admiral Nelson with the British troops, the British fleet, so the British Navy, and the other leg to the outside, and we're bringing it again up, against the Spanish and English troops. And now we're having Battle of Waterloo, where the British Army, so the soldiers, the foot soldiers, fought against, but not only the British troops, fought against Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo in 1850. And there the commander of the British troops was Wellington. And Wellington later became Prime Minister, and he's also known as the Iron Duke. We're having a picture, I'm going to show it you by the next exercise. But let's go through 2-3 things. First, repeating what is in this article. During the 18th century, Britain and France were in conflict. That happened also previously, but here it happened. And in France there was a revolution, and the new government declared a war on Britain. We're going into the 1990 position with the legs. We're going with the legs, with the hands to the knee which is behind us, and now we're going in front with the shoulder to the knee which is in front of us. And there was war. No, they declared war. They declared war on Britain, and then Emperor Napoleon became the Emperor of France. Napoleon became the Emperor of France, and the war continued. And in 1805 there was the Battle of Trafalgar, and the British fleet, commanded by Admiral Nelson, who died in the battle. And there's a column at Trafalgar Square in London as his honor, or memorial, I don't know, maybe both. A monument. And where the troops won, changing to the other side. And the hands again to the knee which is behind of us, and we're going with the shoulder to the knee which is in front of us. And then in 1815 there was the Battle of Waterloo, and there the British troops led by Wellington won finally against Napoleon. And Wellington was known as the Iron Duke, and he became Prime Minister. We're knowing of another Duke, that is William, Duke of Normandy. He was the one who in 1066 made the Norman Conquest. And with that, we're done with this exercise, and we wanted to look at a few dates for the abolition of slavery. So, but now, the next exercise, we're going to the 1990 position, and we're leaning just in front. But now first, the picture again of the Battle of Trafalgar. I don't know when it's on camera. I'm going to show it another time probably. The Battle of Trafalgar, 21st October 1805, was a naval engagement fought by the British Royal Navy against the combined fleets of the French Navy and Spanish Navy. And now if you know how to do it, we can do the pigeon pose. So you can do the pigeon pose. If you know how to do it without injuring yourself. Okay, the abolishment of slavery, that part. So first there were some formal anti-slavery groups formed by the Quakers in the 1790s. And there was also petition, and they petitioned at the parliament to ban the practice of slave trading from West Africa to the Caribbean and America. And William Wilberforce, for example, he was an evangelical Christian and a member of the parliament, and he, together with others, succeeded in turning the public opinion against the slave trade. And in 1807 it became illegal to trade slaves in British ships or from British ports, for example Portsmouth, where the HMS Victory, the ship of Admiral Nelson, can be visited. And in 1833 the Emancipation Act abolished slavery in the whole empire, and the Royal Navy also stopped slave ships from other countries to free the slaves and punish the slave traders. And 2 million Indian and Chinese workers were then employed to replace the freed slaves in sugar plantations in the Caribbean, in mines in South Africa, on railways in East Africa, and in the army in Kenya. And now we're going out of the other leg. First into 1990 with the legs, and we're leaning just in front. We're now of another act, the Act of Union, or the Treaty of the Union, known as that in Scotland. That was 1740, and in that Scotland and England were made one country, or one union. And we don't know what the Bessemer process is. And here to the Act of Union, this is what I just wanted to say. William and Mary's successor, Queen Anne, had no surviving children. This created uncertainty over the succession in England, Wales, and Ireland and Scotland. The Act of Union was then made. And the Parliament then chose when Queen Anne died in 1740. Did I say 1740? It was 1707. 1707, first the Act of Union before Queen Anne died. So 1707, Union, 1740, death of Queen Anne. And now the pigeon pose, if you like to do it, and you can do it without injuring yourself. 1714, then Queen Anne's death, and 1721, the first Prime Minister, Robert Walpole. And we can do the quotes of Shakespeare again. So we're having, as you like it, we're having all the world's a stage. We're having out of Hamlet, To Be or Not to Be, and out of Romeo and Juliet, A Rose Upon Another Name. And we're having out of, we're having out of Henry V, Once More upon the Breach. And a little longer the vision post. Yeah, I guess what I was going to say. The New Year's Day is known in Scotland under Hogmanay. Something like that's what I wanted to go. Hogmanay. It was Robert Burns. Let's repeat Robert Burns quickly. Robert Burns, 1759-96. He is in Scotland known as the Bard. He wrote in Scottish, in English with Scottish names, Scottish vocabulary sometimes, and in complete standard English. And he, for example, made Auld Lang Syne, or he only is best known. Burns' best known works probably the song Auld Lang Syne. And we're done with the pigeon pose. And now to the battlefield stage for last exercise, the sole of the feet together. We're sitting straight and tall up, and we're leaning a bit in front. And his Auld Lang Syne, I don't know who, did he make it, or did he only did it like he did with our thing, traditional folk songs, and changed added lyrics. But that is often sung by people in the UK and also other countries on New Year's Day, and New Year's Day is known in Scotland as Hog My Line. So with this, I thank you very much. We will continue on the next part, the Union flag. So thank you very much, and until next time.